Welcome everyone to today's Insight Group webinar on creating effortless customer experiences on social at scale. Over the next 50 minutes, we'll be discussing how you can thrive in a world of heightened customer expectation, where companies are required to engage and serve their customers seamlessly across multiple platforms, channels, departments, and life cycles. I'm Aaron Jackson. I'm a project director here at the Insight Group, and I'm pleased to be joined today by a guest moderator who I'll be handing over today's discussion to. And that guest moderator is Dan Gingiss. Dan is the author of a new book titled Winning at Social Customer Care, How Brands Create Engaging Experiences on Social Media, and he regularly features in lists of the top customer service influencers. And joining Dan, we have a great panel of speakers. Firstly, Dallen Mckee, who leads social media customer care for eBay. Then we have Joshua March, who's the co-founder and CEO of Conversocial, who are one of the leading digital customer support and engagement solutions. And finally, Maria Martinez, who is a business operations and customer experience leader, who very recently left Microsoft and has also worked for Nokia, HP, and Cigna Healthcare. So alongside this great panel, you're actually going to be a vital part of today's webinar as well. We've had hundreds of people sign up for today's webinar, including people from Nestle, Samsung, PwC, Starbucks, Dell, Shake Shack, Ford, and many more. So we want to utilize you all as well as part of the discussion. So there'll be a number of anonymous polls taking place throughout the discussion, and I also urge you to type in your own questions into the chat box, which we're incorporating in today's discussion. We're also using the hashtag CSMNY, which you can see in the right-hand corner of your screens right now. So do tweet away as well. Let us know your questions and any additional thoughts, and we'll be sure to get them in. So before I hand over to today's panelists, I'd like to kickstart the webinar with our first poll, which should be coming onto your screens shortly. So as that comes up, the poll is, to what extent do you feel your company is providing truly seamless customer experiences across multiple channels and devices? So that's coming up now, so you can select the first answers completely. You're already providing a truly seamless experience. You've got to a large extent, where you're almost there. To some extent, we've got a bit of a way to go, or finally, not at all. But for those of you just starting out. So those results are coming in now. So we're just letting you come in. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll close that panel now. And the results should be appearing on your screen. So yeah, as you can see, it's, I guess, perhaps unsurprisingly, some of you are to some extent in the way there. Well, I guess very surprisingly, 7% of you feel you already have a completely seamless customer experience. So yeah, maybe you can let me know who you are and we can get you in for a future webinar. But yeah, I'd like to hand over to Dan now on our panel. Dan, are these results surprising to you?
Well, hey there, Aaron, and thanks everybody for joining us. No, I wouldn't say that these results are terribly surprising. I would have been much more surprised if we had a lot of complete leads. I definitely want to meet those people as well. And even to a large extent, because this is really difficult stuff, and that's why we've got a webinar here today to talk about it. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time with further introductions because I can tell you that you are talking to some of the smartest people in the business here, and I think you will get a lot out of it. And so I want to really jump right in. Now, the title of the webinar is about creating effortless customer experiences on social at scale. And I want to start with you, Dallen, and ask you, how do you actually define what an effortless customer experience or a seamless experience looks like?
Well, that's a good question. I think that first and foremost, it's just a matter of understanding who your customers are, understanding to what extent they want to possibly be on, and as we're talking about social media specifically, understanding to what extent they want to be on that channel, if that makes sense. And then within that channel, what kind of customers that you have within the different channels. So what kind of customers are actually coming to Twitter? Which ones are going to Facebook? How are they using those different channels? And whatever other handles that you actually feel the need or have the audience base to put yourself as a company. So first and foremost, I think it's just being present in the areas that your customers want and need you most. And that's what we've spent a lot of time really trying to decipher and figure out is we're a unique company as eBay. You know, we don't have one particular product that we just get out or sell, or we actually don't own any product, right? And so for us, it is 100% about creating those customer experiences and in the way that our customers want them, trying to match their tone, trying to match our business model as closely as we can to the individual business models that are on our site. And so when we think about creating a seamless experience, it's that. It's truly trying to understand who our customers are and what level of experience they have and what they're asking and looking for.
That's great. And Maria, you've worked at a number of different companies. How does your answer similar or different from Dallen's?
No, it is very similar to Dallen's. It's really about knowing your customer, understanding their behavior patterns and expectations. And when we're talking about this seamless, I think that it's kind of a little tricky when we talk about seamless customer experience, because there are so many channels that a customer can interface with a company in, and it's really understanding not only the social channels but all of the other channels that they can come in to, and really trying to understand what that journey is about. And then how do you create that that seamless experience, understanding all of those channels that the customers can play in. So you're really trying to understand that behavior pattern so that you can address the needs better and build kind of the right either solutions or support mechanisms for that customer.
And Josh, you are the CEO and founder of a company that is trying to do just that, is to create solutions for brands to create these seamless experiences. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that?
Sure. I would start by saying that one of the awesome things about social media and mobile messaging, these channels that everyone has on their phone, is that by their nature, they are very easy channels. And there's a huge amount of data that shows that for customer service issues, one of the main reasons why people use social media and like it is because it's so easy, right? And if you think about your own experience of when you tweeted at an airline, it's just you pull out your phone and you do it. It takes a couple of seconds. It's much easier than many other contact channels. But for a company, if you really want to deliver that kind of seamless, effortless experience that we're talking about, it's not about just responding, right? And I think the mistake that many companies make is that they'll respond to these things, and they'll care about their response times, and they'll care about having some people there, but it's not really delivering a fully joined up resolution and seamless experience. There isn't an integration into their CRM system. They're not able to resolve things at first contact resolution. There's still areas where they may need to take you off social, and all those things really get in the way and create a lot of barriers to having that kind of effortless experience. And I think it's those barriers that are kind of disrupting the customer experience today. And so what we think is so important, and what we work with our clients towards, is how do you break down all those barriers? What are the integrations you need, the process changes you need, all the things so that you can deliver this fully seamless experience. And I think that's the key thing that many companies are just embarking on today.
Mm-hmm.
So, Maria, one of the challenges there, and one of the barriers, as Josh says, is that there's a lot of different parts of an organization that are touching the customer. So can you talk a little bit from your experience about what are the departments or areas of the company that really need to be involved to make sure that from a customer point of view, the experience is clean and seamless? Because, as we like to say a lot, customers don't care how we're organized, right? They just want what they want. But a lot of companies, most companies, operate in a way that they're organized. So who are the key players?
Yeah, and with customer experience, what's interesting is, from an experience standpoint, you're going to interface with just about all of the different areas in order to, be able to understand and sometimes resolve some of those customer queries. But I think there's probably 5 key areas that I've found that we interface the most with, and one is certainly our IT areas, in terms of being able to, as Josh had said, how do you build the right structure and have the appropriate tooling in place so that you can know, and secure data around the customer experience and the customer journeys. So IT is certainly one. Marketing is your other key interface points, because when we talk about branding, and I think we'll have a little bit of a discussion on who owns that customer branding, I think marketing is key. Product engineering, if you're in a product group, certainly the product or the service that you're supporting, and they're the guys that are building it. Those are key interface points so that you share the information that you're hearing, you share the communication and the conversations that the customers are having back into those product groups so that you can enhance the product, enhance the service, and be able to not only respond but to predict some of the customer needs in the future and be able to build that into the product and service. Then there's certainly the support area. I think that's basically a spot where a lot of us play, and depending on the company, corporate comms or the communications team is a support mechanism for folks. So I think the 5 key areas are IT, marketing, product engineering, support, and communications.
All right, and Dallen, are those the same at eBay? And then sort of follow-up question is, how do you get all these people together? Because there's a lot of people, right? How do you get everybody in the same room and understanding the direction that the company's trying to go in so that, we are all treating the customer in the same way?
Yeah, and so as far as the groups, definitely we're aligned. I think it's an interesting question because with social media today, and as you guys all know, the public nature of it and how certain things can just go viral through social media, you have to be involved in every aspect of the group. Josh brought up an important aspect, or of the company I should say, but Josh brought up an important aspect earlier in regards to the seamlessness of how there's certain times where companies may have to take a contact to an offline type environment in order to handle, personal information of a customer, things like that. So in that regard, we've had to work very closely because we started out that way. We started out to where we were receiving customers through our social channels, and in order to really dig into the account and provide personal identifying information, we had to go to an email channel. And so it took us some time as a company to work with privacy teams and our legal teams to make sure that we could now transition that into working into the direct messages and the private message format and be able to assist our customers seamlessly within that one channel. And so working with privacy. Definitely, as she had mentioned earlier, IT, marketing, we work very, very closely with our PR team, and in fact, we give our employees that handle our customers through social channels, we give them a direct line of contact to our PR team so that if anything does arise or there is any clarification we need on maybe how we need to respond to a particular customer publicly, they have that very quick communication channel to where we can get a specific verbiage back to that customer in the way that the brand would like to see fit. Also brand, product and process. One thing that I'm very passionate about with social media is it's one of the best channels, in my opinion, to where you can gather insights from your customers in as real time as possible. More than phones, more so than emails. It's an environment to where when your customers they can have a voice, I guess I should say. And so we work strongly in creating ties with our product teams, internal process teams to make sure, and specifically one that we've had a great relationship with is our mobile team. And when insights come in or customer feedback comes in about, for example, a mobile app release or things like that, we are very quick to partner with those groups and ask them to listen to that feedback and assess whether or not we as a company can make the changes as our customers are asking. And so everything encompassed, communications as well. I would say another thing that we spent some time on, or a group I should say we spent some time on, is our reporting and analytics teams. And that I think is crucial to really try to understand social, understand the volume, understand where headcount needs to be established, those kinds of things, which social's different. In a phones environment, you can easily, I should say semi-easily forecast headcount. With social media, I believe that you actually kind of dictate at certain times your volume and when it comes in. The more responsive you are, the more replies that come in from customers, and the more customers start to transition from this is my second line of contact to my first line of contact, and you just generate volume by being more present, and possibly even getting to a position where you're now advertising that you have social media support, and that generates its volume. So it's a little bit more unpredictable, which means you have to be very good at understanding the analytics behind the volume.
That would be kind of a great topic to kind of chat a little bit more about if we have the time, to really kind of understand. It's almost, how do you operationalize social media data? How do you operationalize social media so that you kind of have a good understanding, or can figure out and predict staffing needs, productivity, efficiency, all of that craziness that you have in the contact center world that is absolutely predictable because it's just been around for so long. How do you transfer that, or do you, in the social media space, and how do you do it well enough? Because I know folks are all struggling with that.
Josh, I have a feeling you can answer that one.
Yeah, I think this is something that is really, really fundamental to the industry today, right? We've had a lot of companies over the past few years have kind of jumped into social care and customer service over social media and mobile messaging, mainly because they had people at the executive level who really believed in the power of social and believed in the importance and the relevance to engage with their customers through these channels, but weren't really giving it the thought of how do we operationalize these metrics, and how do we make a business case for this based purely on the numbers? And I think there's a shift that's been happening in the industry over the last year especially, where we're now getting to the stage where everyone's going, well, show me the numbers, show me the money. And I think there's this huge transition where every company, every organization, every vendor like us is having to go, okay, how do we ensure that you can really understand what is the cost per resolution in social, and how does that compare to traditional channels? And it's different. It's difficult, right? Because social and mobile messaging have what I call the kind of messaging paradigm, where you don't have this easy, clean-cut beginning and end to a case. You have this continuous conversation between the brand and the customer that never quite finishes, and that the customer could always message you again a day later, a week later in the same thread. And so from our approach to that is to have really clear rules as when a case starts and finishes in ways that are as comparable as possible to those traditional channels. And we actually worked with Forrester recently to build out a total economic impact report, kind of really looking at, if you invest into a social care operation, what are the costs, what are the benefits you're going to make in terms of cost savings, like call deflection, what are the benefits in terms of increasing customer brand value. And I think whatever method you use, whether it's the Forrester one, it's your own metrics, I think it's kind of on all of us as practitioners to really embrace this and say, you know what, it's time for us to start making the case for social care based on real numbers, and not just because you've got to be in social.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Josh, and it kind of leads me to my next question, which is around some companies that are really so gigantic that they're getting hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of brand mentions in a given week. A number of them have kind of thrown up their hands and said, look, we can't do this. This is just too big. We can't handle this. Now, I've heard Jay Baer say before that, that's a decision that every company has to make, and that, obviously every company could participate. They just have to hire the people to do it. But what are you seeing, Josh, because you talk to a ton of different brands, what are you seeing with some of these really, really large organizations? How are they making the case that this is something that they have to staff for? And especially given that not all of the inquiries in social are replacing phone calls.
Yep. It is a difficult question, but I think there are three parts to it. One, it's about proving the ROI, what I was just talking about. Two, there's automation. And three, there are ways of tapping into the community. So that first one on ROI, I think a lot of companies really are embracing that, hey, this is a better channel than the phone. It's equivalent in price to chat. It has a really positive impact on NPS and CSAT measures. And actually, it's not that the companies can't staff it. Most of these companies have thousands of agents picking up the phone. It's just that they don't really have an understanding of, is it worth it from an ROI perspective? And so getting that ROI perspective clear and like understanding the costs and understanding the benefits, I think is step number one. And actually there are, we have customers today who are real kind of innovators in the field and who have really embraced that. And these are big companies, but they said, you know what, this is a better channel to engage, and therefore we're going to really promote this. And interestingly, there are some that are doing that from a kind of cost perspective. There are also some that are doing it from a, we just know that this increases brand value, and we don't even care if our agents spend longer on social than on the phone. It's such an amazing channel to build these relationships. We're happy with that. So there are two ways to do it, but either way, you've got to understand the ROI, and it's not really about it's too big. It's about we need to understand the investment case to do it. The second ones, I won't talk too much about them, but obviously automation has been a big keyword over the last year. There's been lots of stuff talking about bots and chatbots and messenger bots. What we've seen is that if you try and create just a pure bot by itself, it's often not a great experience yet. The AI isn't quite there today to have a fully automated experience for customer service, but there are lots of cases where you can build in automation, like IVR type welcome flows when you DM someone on Twitter or when you message them, that just handles the first part of the conversation and helps collect the right information that you need and route it to an agent. And those kind of things can help take 15 to 20% of the messages from agents and actually speed up the response and speed up the experience that the customer's getting. So that's a big one we're seeing a lot of our customers roll out. And then the third one, which is only really for the biggest, is around tapping into the community. A lot of companies have built up these bodies of experts who are often answering technical questions on forums. That's something that Microsoft do really well. A lot of other companies do. And we have some customers now who are taking some of those experts and bringing them into social media. That's a relatively new phenomenon, but if you do that well, it really enables you to scale up that social care operation in a very efficient way, and that's something that's really exciting.
Yeah. No, Josh, those are great responses on all three of the ROI, the automation, and tapping into the community, because that's absolutely, I think, that the best way, certainly of approaching it, and where I have also seen, companies, kind of migrate towards. The bot one is pretty interesting because that one is relatively recent, in terms of the actual application and implementation of bot, but I agree it has to be done well. And that's going to take some time because I think it's just very early stages of us understanding how to best utilize that technology, and using it at scale for simple stuff is where I have seen most of the companies gravitate towards for those volume kinds of questions. But is there a way that we can evolve that and really personalize it? I think is kind of that next phase of it, I would think.
Yeah, we're going to jump to bots in 1 second. I just want to remind the audience that you are free to ask questions as well, and we'd love to have your questions for the panelists. You can do it in two ways. You can either put your question right into the chat box in the GoToWebinar, or you can go to Twitter and use the hashtag CSMNY, and we have people monitoring that, and they will pass over the questions to me to be able to ask our panelists. So we'd love your involvement. I do want to go back to bots, and I want to talk to Dallen, because I know that you guys have started testing some chat bots. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you're doing. And then as a group, I want to talk about this idea of the handoff between a chatbot and a human, because I think a lot of the chatbots that are being built, including eBay's to date, are around trying to automate a process that you really can already do on a website or somewhere else. You might be shopping for flowers, or you might be looking for a particular auction item on eBay. It's that moment, though, that the customer has trouble and needs to talk to a customer, and I really want to kind of get into how that works. But Dallen, if you could sort of start with what your guys' approach has been to chatbots, that'd be great.
Yeah, so just to start off and be clear, we actually don't have chatbots as it pertains to our customer service and responding through Twitter, Facebook, when you just go to our handles. And so the bot that we're actually utilizing today is more for a search feature. So in essence, it's similar to some of those the electronics tools that are out there today that you can ask questions to regarding where you want to find a particular item, and it just helps you, it steers you in that direction. It's called the eBay Shop Bot. And so I think the crucial thing when thinking about bots in that regard, though, is to your point, Dan, people at certain points of the maybe conversation want to speak to someone personally, and to be able to give them that option is something that we're continually pursuing even with the Shop Bot today. That feature is specifically, we'd like our customers to be able to chime in, ask specific questions. It'll guide you more, pinpoint you specifically to that product that you're looking for, and that's kind of the extent of that Shop Bot. But down the road, we've been pursuing ideas to where even within that search feature of that particular bot, that we have this particular command where you could say, talk to a person or something along those regards, and it would bring you to one of our social media agents if that was what a team we were to put in charge of it. So my philosophy around bots is this. I think each brand is actually very, very different. And even going back to the conversation around, how a big company can try to, or is maybe scared of jumping on the bandwagon and going to social media, in that regard as well, I think each brand is going to be different. There might be some brands where it just doesn't make sense. I think there's majority of large brands, though, however, it makes a lot of sense to make that leap and jump in. And it's all a matter of really understanding, again, where your customers are. Every company is going to go through a cycle of whether it's a cost-saving cycle that you're focused on right now, or whether it's kind of a brand perception building cycle that you're focused on right now. And as it pertains to brand perception, we've had conversations with you and I, Dan, in the past about how you cannot afford to not engage and represent your brand when it's being spoken about a lot. I think bots can help out in that regard. I've seen different brands use a bot system to where all it does is sets up the initial conversation, to where when a customer might tweet you or write you on Facebook, and the bot will chime in just to let you know that your inquiry has been received and that will be responded to shortly. And I think that's a great idea, because the customer not only gets a quick response, but they also feel as though their issues being listened to and being addressed. But on top of that, I'm very, very passionate about creating as personalized as you can experiences through social media. I think that you can drop the ball a little bit if you go too heavy on the bot side, and you don't create a brand voice within social media to where you can actually match who your customer is, what your customer's tone of voice is in their written communication, as well as just engage in a different way than phones. And I've said this before, but I refuse, if I'm running a social media department, I refuse to allow it to be just another customer service channel. I think it's more. I think it's more about being able to fully know not only how your customer uses your brand, but really who your customer is on a personal basis. And I think you lose a little bit of that with bots, but I think that bots can help from an efficiency perspective if used correctly in certain aspects of the communication.
So Josh, I know you're really passionate about automation. Talk to us about how companies can apply it to customer service without losing that human touch.
Yeah, well, I think Dallen's correct in saying that the best way to do that today is really using it as a kind of entry level in to the service experience, right? So someone DMs you, instantly gets a welcome message saying like, hey, thanks for reaching out. Tell us about what kind of issue you've got, and you can maybe structure the next kind of one or two messages that route them. Okay, it's a service issue or it's this issue, and say, okay, please, you need to tell us your email or your loyalty number, whatever it is, and then it's only going to the agent at that point. Those kinds of very simple automations today will save a lot of time from the agent perspective. They'll be much quicker for the customer, and it means that as soon as it goes to an agent, the agent has all the relevant information that they can actually resolve the issue. And so you may be reducing the amount of messages that the agents are sending by a factor of 2, and you're actually taking the speed of resolution, you're halving the speed of resolution as well. So those kind of things are kind of very simple lead-ins that can have a really big impact, and it's a pretty small thing, but it can have a big impact and kind of make the human part of it even better and more effective. So I think that's something that just every company should be looking at today. I think as we look ahead, the key then is just to take baby steps, right? There's no doubt that the application of machine learning and data science into customer service is really going to be pretty revolutionary over the next 3 to 5 years. But we're not going to get there if you try and jump in head first, try and create some kind of fully automated experience, which then isn't actually very good, isn't personalized, frustrates the customer. That's just going to put your customers off. So it's about kind of getting in there in small ways and just gradually increasing the efficiency, both for agents and for consumers. And that's what's going to really make a difference.
That's great. Well, we're getting some awesome questions in from people who are listening to the webinar, so I want to make sure to get to some of those. I'm going to combine a couple of them. We did get a question from Nestor Portillo, who asked if you think that people are held back by replicating old call center models as opposed to evolving to a new approach. And a related question from Ryan Wheatley was about how do you build a business case for social over other channels. So I'll open it up to any of the panelists to sort of address this question of how does social relate to other channels? Do we need to treat it differently from other channels? Yes or no, from a from a hiring approach, from a technology approach, however you want to take that. And then if we sort of know we need to be in social, but we need to prove it to management, how do we start building that business case?
Well, I can start, I guess. As far as proving the business case, I think that's an ongoing question. And I think that, again, every brand might be slightly different, but one thing that we really pride ourselves on here is the fact that our executives are very involved in social media. In fact, the interesting thing is that our executives are so involved, and specifically the CEO of the company, to where, you think about the phone environment, and yes, you asked the question, should it be different than like phones or traditional environments? I absolutely think so. And the reason I say that is because you could have agents on phones that make drastic mistakes or give wrong information, or whatever. Maybe they escalate a customer, they don't have good soft skills, whatever the case might be. And really no one's going to know that, right? Maybe outside of that individual's supervisor, or if there's a quality, aspect of someone listening to that phone call. Social media is absolutely different in the regard that if we as a brand within our social media responses possibly make a mistake, I can tell you there's been a few times where I've personally got an email from our CEO because he's recognized that. And that's how active he is on monitoring our social channels, right? And we actually monitor the CEO's social media as well, and help in some engagement on his personal pages there. And so that's why I feel it's different. And when you have executives that understand that aspect, that it's public, that it's your brand, and they bought into the fact that it takes a little bit more of a perfectionist to make sure that everything is kind of wrapped up tightly, and your PR groups and marketing groups are very involved in what your customer service groups are doing in social. It's a little easier to make a business case, right? But again, you have to prove that case of representing your brand, and you have to talk about the value of what that can do, and really get numbers and data and analytics behind how many customers could value or receive value from having us as a presence. We ran, just an example, a marketing campaign a few years back to where our marketing team just put out a campaign, and they asked us to get involved in engaging on that social campaign and having fun with the customers, and really just trying to get more and more people to to have conversations about that campaign. And that campaign went viral, and we had the most impressions that we've ever had on a social media campaign because we engaged. And the interesting thing is a year later, they recycled that same campaign because it did so well, but this time around, they didn't really loop our customer service teams in, and it had less than half of the impact it had the year before. And so when you can do things like that, do some piloting, show the value of customer or employee engagement with our customers through social channels by trying out little pilots, that's what I recommend, is demonstrating the power, demonstrating the influence of what you can provide.
So I absolutely agree. With the response that we just heard, the one piece that I would say is, there's some learnings that you can take from operationalizing what was done in operationalizing contact center and online information. There's the whole trick is, in terms of identifying, how do you identify the value in a real quantifiable way of social media, and the way that we do that has to be different. It has to be new. It is a different way of measuring, and to Dallen's point, in the contact center space, an agent can have a conversation and, no one would really see the impact of that necessarily. But in social, it's just hugely visible. Everybody sees it. There is a broad impact. So it has to be different. The things that we measure are different. The things that we're looking at in terms of engagement and sentiment and how do the customers feel, and what was the impact or what was the value of that interaction to the company. So the measurements do have to be different. I absolutely agree. I don't know that we've absolutely nailed that down yet, and again, they will be different potentially for different customers or different brands.
All right, I'm going to move to a couple of quick hit questions. So I'm looking for just a couple of word answers here so we can get in a few more audience questions, and then I have a couple others for you as well. Jill Holder wants to know about regulatory issues with handling each conversation on the original platform. Josh, I know you deal with a lot of regulated industries. Can you talk about quickly some best practices on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing that you need to do is to really get your kind of risk, security, compliance, IT teams to fully understand how social media works, which isn't necessarily easy, but I think is a really important first step. A lot of them have this kind of gut reaction of just like, no way, don't do anything. But actually, once you get into it, I think a lot of them realize that there's a kind of similar security level, if not better security, in like private messaging on Facebook or DMing on Twitter as there is through any other private digital communication channel like email. Now, obviously, in many regulated industries, that's not sufficient for certain types of information. And I think the key thing there is that you're building out some kind of secure authentication mechanism within that kind of social workflow. And it's something that we've done with a number of our clients, and many other companies do it as well. So, in the messenger thread, you need to take some form of PII that has to be through a completely secure channel. You can open a web view inside that messenger thread or inside that Twitter thread, authenticate the customer, take that information in a way that it's going directly to your servers, and missing Facebook and Twitter, and then go back into the thread to have the rest of the conversation. So there are ways that you can do that, and all it really takes is a bit of commitment and investment from your side and possibly from your IT team to make that happen. And so I think the core thing here is that none of the challenges are insurmountable, right? It's just about getting the understanding internally and potentially making some technical steps to enable that kind of authentication.
Okay, Maria, Ellie wants to know, when building a new team, what is the most important role?
When building a new social team, what is the most important role? That's a great question, because I always want to say, it's your team lead, in your social team that's really going to be closer to both agents and in driving the right behavior and how to respond, from a customer perspective. And it's really being able to select the right profile of both the agent and the team leads to ensure that that the focus is absolutely on understanding your customer and driving the best solutions for them.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I would argue is that I would highlight customer service experience over social media experience. I think
Yes.
you can teach anybody Facebook and Twitter, but you can't teach them how to be empathetic and how to, handle customer complaints calmly and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really required.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dallen, Jim Mack wants to know about outsourcing social service. Have you ever considered that? Do you think it's a good idea? What are your thoughts?
It's always something that comes up, right? Us personally, from a customer service perspective, no. We think that, and well, I should say we strongly feel that when you handle customers through social media, the biggest thing that is hard to get out of an outsourced group, and I apologize if there's anyone listening that runs an outsourced group, but is the engagement and the passion for the brand that your actual employees have, right? So when you create an environment within your brand, a culture that your brand has with its employees, that's how you create engagement, right? That's how you create people that value your brand at just a whole different level. And so I just feel like that's what needs to happen when you answer customer inquiries through social media. So I say that from a customer service perspective, because what you guys had mentioned earlier in regards to most important role, I absolutely agree. It's people that it's hiring those people to do the job that are passionate about your brand, that are empathetic, that very much understand how to treat and handle people professionally as well as personally. Now, on the flip side of that, though, we have had opportunities to hire outsourced groups as it pertains to some marketing campaigns on social media, possibly some simple type engagement in relation to those marketing campaigns with outsourced groups, and I think that's absolutely okay, as a lot of that does not have to deal with possibly the more difficult scenarios that require a lot more passion as well as customer service centered responses to customers. And so kind of two different aspects of it, but customer service wise, my answer would be no. I think that the internal employees just bring more passion, but from a marketing perspective, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Dallen. Well said. We got a question from Erica about gathering product feedback from social media, and I'm actually going to take that one because I really like this. I think there's two ways that you can do that. The first is by improving the products that you have, right? So by using a social listening tool and listening for complaints especially, and consistent complaints that come up, it's one thing to respond and handle that customer, but it's another to go back to the product team and actually fix the root cause, and I think that it's really important for companies to do that. The other is actually in product development, and one of my favorite examples of that is OtterBox, which is the phone case company. They were noticing that a lot of people were talking about bringing their phones into the shower because they wanted to listen to music. And that prompted an idea to create a waterproof case, which they didn't have before. So I think that's a really cool example of, just using social listening to listen, frankly, and to hear what people are asking for, and maybe to devise products off of that. I want to jump to look into the future. So what's so exciting about this space is that it is changing at an unbelievably rapid pace. If you look back just to 2016 at all of the feature functionality that Facebook and Twitter added directly in support of customer service, it's really unbelievable, and they keep doing it. So I want to ask each of you, what do you think is going to happen if we gather again in a year? What is going to be similar or different to what we're seeing now? And maybe a different way of saying it is, what are you most excited about? Let's start with you, Maria.
Oh, hold me to the last. I'd like to hear a little bit from what Josh and and Dallen have to say.
All right, go for it, Josh.
Sure. I think there's kind of two things that I'm certainly excited about. One is that I do think we're going to start seeing a lot more direct revenue generation through messaging channels. You know, up to now, social care has really been around just answering service issues. And, you know, even though for many companies a big part of their contact center is, you know, yes, service on the one hand, but sales on the other hand, social has really just been about the service part. And largely because so much of it was public, it didn't really feel appropriate to have sales in there. But now with the rise of messaging and the ability to have more interactive, you know, bot functionality in there, the ability to start taking payments, I think we're going to see companies really start to drive more direct revenue and bookings, whether that's hotel bookings, flight bookings, e-commerce, and that's going to have a big impact in terms of the volume and the growth. So I think we're going to see more of that. And then the other one, of course, is around AI and automation. You know, last year we saw this huge amount of hype around bots. A lot of people realized that if you build a load of these standalone bots, and don't have a good agent handoff, then it's a bad experience. And we're kind of in the valley, in the kind of dip at the moment. But now we're starting to see a lot more companies start to take these smart baby steps where they're introducing more and more automation that's increasing efficiency. And I think in a year's time, that's going to really accelerate.
Awesome. How about you, Dallen?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think there's no question, first and foremost, that some messaging type system is going to be a future. I think that from what I can tell and all the research I've done in the area is that customers want to start to feel, first and foremost, that brands know who they are. They want to feel as though they're interacting with the brand as if they interact with their friends and family. And I think that's done through text messaging type systems or messaging type systems. I think the of marketplaces or majority of businesses in general are going to start to shift in the next 5 to 10 years. And what I mean by that is we've seen studies showing that a lot of businesses that are more just localized businesses not doing as well, right, as internet-based businesses. And as I think the internet-based businesses and companies change their business models to accommodate that type of infrastructure, they're going to have to be more relevant in this type of communication, or they will also continue to decline. And that's just my opinion, right? And I think from marketing perspective all the way down to the way that you interact and engage with your customers. And so, we meet up, years from now, I think you'll start to see that a lot more, and a lot's being done in marketing on social media today, right? But I think a lot more starts to transition that way. And I think that brands spend a lot more time really digging into who their customers are and create that environment where it feels like a family or friend type of interaction.
I absolutely agree with what each of you has said. And the other piece that's also curious to me when we talk about, what will this look like in the future, I start to think about more of the youth and that particular segment that is completely immersed in social media, and this is just the way that they communicate, and all of the other modalities either don't exist in their minds or they're just not wired that way. We've wired them into this completely social setting, and it's understanding what's that new wave of consumer that's coming into play and how do we best support them, because I think that's something that we're again starting to grapple with and starting to look at in a little more detail and understand what is that mindset of this younger consumer that's coming into play.
Awesome. Hey, we have another audience question from NYS Labrador on Twitter, and she wants to know, is there a recommended number of social media channels that a company should maintain? Let's go to Dallen with that one.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And the similar topic came up earlier, right? But I think when you're looking at either joining social media or looking to join additional channels or understand how many you should support, I think the one thing you have to keep in mind, and one of the biggest mistakes you could make, is if you attempt to opt into a channel, start utilizing and providing support in that channel, and then you cannot keep up with it and you end up backing out, right? So when you talk about the optimal channels, again, all brands are going to be different. And so us specifically, for example, we have them, and I think obviously most brands, majority of all contacts are going to be Facebook and Twitter. So those, in my opinion, are an absolute must. We've spent some time doing a lot of listening to other channels such as Instagram, even Pinterest, looking at kind of what kind of customers are there, how many, what are they saying. And for us, it just hasn't made sense to, from a customer service perspective, start engaging on those quite yet. But we still listen quite often and try to determine when is the right time to do that so that we can fully support it at scale while maintaining those quick handle times. One thing that we have done, and we've made a transition to do, is we now start supporting comments on YouTube. We've decided as a brand that we need to start utilizing YouTube a lot more, and we've started posting how-to videos, how to list items, how to ship items, all that kind of stuff that supports some of our seller base, a few how-to videos that supports our buying base, how to return an item, those kinds of things. And giving best practices and tips. And we've determined that it's in our best interest to turn on the comments on those particular videos and start engaging and assisting our customers there. Now, the point behind that, right, was to really focus on possible contact reduction in hoping that those videos, and as our customer service teams, be it phones, emails, or social, start promoting those videos, future-wise, it'll start to decrease customers having maybe to call in to get clarification on those type of issues. And so that's where we look at it from, is what channels could possibly help us not only decrease contacts, but also that makes sense for us to dive in due to the fan base there. So again, the size of your company makes a big impact though, and how much you can get the company to willing to invest. But my caution would be, do not engage in a channel only to turn around, in a couple months and determine you can't support it and back out. I think that's a bad look on the brand.
I think that's a great answer, Dallen. So as we finish up and kind of continue to talk about the future, I'm interested in knowing, maybe some more specifics in terms of when Aaron asks us back here in exactly 365 days, are we all going to be experts at messaging bots? Is that going to be something that any one of you would stand up and predict right now? Are there going to be social channels out there that aren't out there today, or ones that are out there today that have disappeared? I'm looking for somebody to stand up and put a stake in the ground on what might be coming forward. Anybody want to do that?
Sure, I'll jump in here and put one extra stake in the ground that hasn't really been discussed today, which is that in a year's time, I think we are going to see a lot more companies who have combined teams across social, messaging, and web chat. I've already seen this start to happen in some of our clients, where especially with the rise of messaging, and for many of our clients, they're now getting significantly higher volumes of private messages over both Twitter DM and Messenger than they are public. And with that, the mode of responding to those customers and the training that's needed for agents has started to become pretty similar to chat. And with the kind of high volatility of social, where if something goes wrong and you have a crisis, suddenly the volumes can spike 10x. Being able to have a kind of wider pool of agents who can quickly shift over to deal with that is really, really useful from an operational perspective. And so I think we're going to see many companies today, and I think that if we're going to have a guest here in a year's time who is going to come on, and they'll be running a team who is handling customer service across social messaging and chat channels all together, possibly with some form of blended agent. And I think that's going to be a big change from where we are today. Social can no longer be an island, and I think that'll definitely be a shift.
All right, I love that. Organizational change coming in the next year, says Joshua March of Conversocial. Write it down, everybody, or tweet it out so that we can come back in a year and look at it. Well, thank you guys very much. I'm going to hand it back to Aaron Jackson, who is our coordinator at the Insight Group, to close out the webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And yeah, Josh, I'll start work on that webinar now for 12 months' time. But yeah, thank you, Dan, and Josh, and Maria, and Dallen as well. It's been an interesting discussion, and it's been great hearing all your perspectives. Before everyone leaves and gets kind of that well-deserved coffee, I guess a quick reminder that we'll be sending out the recordings to the webinar probably early next week. And with those recordings, we'll also include a link to the Forrester report that Josh mentioned earlier in the discussion. We'll also be tweeting that out if you're eager to get to it before then. One other thing I wanted to point out, we've got the upcoming Corporate Social Media Summit that Dallen, Maria, and Dan are going to be joining us at, with over 50 brand speakers, which are coming up onto your screen now. We're sending out the link to the brochure for the event, so feel free to have a look at the brochure if you're interested in more information about that and asking some of the questions in person. I also wanted to let everyone know if you're looking for any summer reading about Dan's book, Winning at Social Customer Care, How Top Brands Create Engaging Experiences on Social Media. You can see the cover of that appearing on screen as well now. So yeah, do check that out too. And yeah, thanks again for everyone that joined us. And yeah, I'll be sending out the recordings shortly, so look forward to them. And once again, thanks to all the panelists and everyone for joining.